Welcome to Comicstorian Classic. Today we're going to be covering Invincible Volume 1. I know we're super behind the times on this one, but a bunch of you guys still ask for me to do it, so here it is. The mountains sped past below as Invincible flies as fast as he can, the man held tightly in his arms. You know, you really ruined my afternoon, Invincible tells the man, finally far enough away from everything. He tosses the man just as he explodes, thrown it clear. Invincible then lands in a pile of snow, and he picks himself up, dusting off the snow and looking around. If I keep this up, I'm going to give myself a heart attack, he says with a smile as he leaps into the air to fly home. 4 months ago, Mark Grayson's mom, Deborah, pounds on the bathroom door. If you keep that up, you're going to give yourself a heart attack, she warns him loudly. Jesus, Mom, I'm just reading a comic book. I'll be out in a minute, he yells back as she walks away, telling him that he'll be late for school. Mark finally makes his way down to the kitchen, noting that he has 10 minutes to spare. Where's Dad at? Did he come home last night? He asks, getting his breakfast. But his mother says no, that he's been very busy at work lately. So Mark flips the TV on and a news reporter tells the world that Omni-Man has been fighting a dragon in Taiwan for the last 10 hours, stopping it from enslaving the people. Well, now I know where he is, Mark tells her, and his mother looks up at the television. I hope he brings back something nice for me. I've never been to Taiwan, she comments. Later, Mark is walking out to school when his friend William catches up, inviting him out with the rest of the friends. But Mark can't go. He's got to work at the Burger Mart tonight. A little bit more time passes and he walks outside, his soul-crushing job to toss away the garbage, and he flings it into the air, and it keeps going and going and going. The trash disappears into the atmosphere. A small smile creeps on his face as he realizes what has happened. It's about time, he whispers. That night, he and Deborah sit down for dinner, knowing his father's going to be late. I had an interesting day today, Mark begins, but with a gust of air, his father is there, telling them that he had to deal with a flood in Egypt. He tells them that he dealt with the dragon. And once I found out who was controlling the thing, there wasn't much to it, Nolan tells them. Deborah smiles, looking at her son, asking if anything interesting happened to him. Yeah, I think I'm finally getting my superpowers, Mark tells them, and Deborah smiles. That's nice. Can someone pass the potatoes? She asks. That night, Mark stands out on the roof of their porch, talking to himself. His father told him that flying is a reflex, and it should kick in when he jumps. Even if he can't fly, as long as he is invulnerable, he should be fine. But if I can't fly yet, then it's possible that I'm not invulnerable yet? Oh, the heck with it, he finally says, leaping, closing his eyes. And he opens them to find himself hovering over the earth. Too cool, he yells, rocketing into the air. A little more time passes and a gang of thieves are running from the police. They yell at their Rocky friend for following them, telling him that he was supposed to deal with the cops. Just because bullets bounce off of me doesn't mean that they feel like rubber. There were 6 cops back there ready to open fire, he yells at them. He picks up his buddies leaping over a fence, but they're smacked out of the air by Mark, dressed in probably the worst superhero costume ever. Are you trying to rob us or stop us? The Rockman says, leaping to fight the hero. Mark knocks him away with a single punch. Sorry about that. I guess the outfit can be misleading. I'm sure my intentions are clear now, Mark tells the unconscious man. What in God's name are you wearing? Nolan asks, standing in a nearby alleyway. He asks Mark if it's a little early for him to be fighting crime since he's only had his powers for about a week. Mark smiles, pulling down his mask, explaining that he was just practicing flying when he saw the robbers. Could have just let him get away, he tells his dad. Nolan nods, telling his boy to follow him. I'm going to introduce you to a guy who can help you out. So a short time later, the two are standing at the tailor's shop, with Mark wearing a new supersuit. Prom dresses by day, nuclear-powered battle armor by night, with the occasional spandex number thrown in every now and then, the tailor tells Mark. Nolan tells Mark that the tailor was the first one to create his costume. Nolan suddenly has to leave, though, called away by a crisis. So Mark continues to talk to the tailor, explaining that while he likes the suit, he doesn't think it's right for him. Not iconic enough, Mark explains, even if it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The tailor nods, telling the young hero to come up with a few names, so that they can tailor the suit to his name. So the next day, Mark is leaving class, with the teacher asking one of the students to stay behind. By his locker, Mark overhears a bully messing with one of the students, so he turns, telling the large kid to lay off. What's the matter? You feeling left out or something? Well, I'm sure I can make you feel included, the bully tells Mark, shoving him. But Mark just slams the boy into the locker, denting the metal, letting the boy slide down. It's only a few moments later that he's sitting in the principal's office, with the man telling him that he needs to not let this kind of thing get to him. He needs to be worrying about college. The principal informs Mark that it isn't his job to protect the other kids. You're not invincible, you know, the principal tells him, bringing a smile to Mark's face. So the next day, the bank robbers rush out onto the street. They run through traffic, ducking down a side alleyway where their van should be waiting. But they suddenly stop short as they see the van lifted over the head of a young hero. "Drop it, freak, or I'll blow your head away!" one of them shouts, drawing a pistol. Mark looks at them. "I wouldn't do that. I'm invincible," he warns them. A little time passes, now that Mark has his superhero name. Nolan, Omni-Man, leans forward. "Okay, son, I think you're old enough for me to tell you where I come from." Omni-Man begins. He explains that he comes from the planet known as Viltrum. The Viltrumite were very human-like, except that they had the ability to fly, move at super speed, and possessed super strength. The Viltrumite had obtained the perfect society, and so they decided to bring that perfection to the rest of the galaxy. The World Betterment Committee was formed, and they began to search the stars. They discovered worlds that were at crucial stages of development. They would install global defense satellites, and the scientists would assist in the development of the society's technology. Nolan joined the committee when he was old enough and was the first to discover the planet of Earth. He had grown fond of the world through his observations and placed it under the committee's notice. But it was decided that Earth was too crude and not developed enough for the committee's betterment. So Nolan offered a solution. He would live amongst the Earthlings, protecting them, nurturing them until they were ready for Viltrum's aid. The committee agreed, although they warned Nolan that due to Earth's remote location, there might not be a chance of returning. Nolan went anyway. He discovered that Earth was a nest of individuality. He also quickly learned that the Earthlings were in constant danger, protecting them from the monsters, aliens, and everyday accidents. One day he lifted a car and stopped to see a beautiful woman. "It was less than a year before I'd met your mother, but that's a story for another time." Nolan leans back, looking down at his young son playing with his toys, and he explains that he's telling them all of this for a reason. "Things are going to change for you in a few years when you hit puberty. You're going to start to get acne, your voice will start to crack and eventually change. And you'll begin to grow hair in strange places. You're going to start looking at girls in a whole new light. There's a good chance you're going to start to develop superpowers. Mark, do you understand?" Nolan tells him and finally asks. Young Mark looks at his father for a moment, action figure still in hand. "Wow, am I going to be able to fly?" he finally asks. It's years later that teenage Mark Grayson is sitting in his bed, unable to sleep. "Yeah, I can fly," he whispers, finally getting up, flying out the window, wearing only his sweatpants. He flies over the city and sees a strange blue man stealing game boxes. He launches himself at the villain, only to be knocked away by one hard punch. "Aren't you past your bedtime, young man?" the crook asks, mocking him. "Actually, yeah," Mark agrees, launching himself at the villain again. This time an explosion sparks between them and the two are launched away. They both look up to see a group of costumed heroes on a hoverbike. "That was a BB. You don't want to see what I could do with a golf ball. Now, who started it?" Rex Splode asks, his hand already ignited with another explosive object. But the blue villain reaches out, taking their hoverbike and knocking the heroes aside. "Way to go, Rex. We had the element of surprise," Robot tells his overzealous teammate. "Sorry, seemed like a good idea at the time," Rex tells their leader as he helps Duplicate to her feet. The blue man then rushes the team, but Mark is there, knocking him out with one punch. "Wow, never mind. Nice job, kid." Robot nods, looking down at the villain. The group begins to pull the crook away as Robot calls in another hoverbike. One of the heroes, a red-headed girl, walks up to Mark. "Nice costume," she tells him, looking at his sweatpants. "Sorry, there wasn't a phone booth around here?" Mark tells her, looking at the girl for a moment. "Do I know you?" he asks, and Adam Eve looks at him too. "You do look familiar," she agrees. Robot comes over, introducing the team to Mark. And finally, they all leave on a second hoverbike, taking the man with them. It's the next day that Mark comes up behind Eve at school. "I knew it!" he exclaims, and she turns, smiling. "Hey, it's you. We've been in physics together all this time," she comments. They walk down the halls, with Eve catching Mark up on what it's like to be a teenage superhero. They eventually walk out of the school, with Eve inviting Mark to the teen team's secret lair to follow up on the incident from last night. Mark agrees, and Eve leads him out to the dumpsters outside of their school. "Nice place," Mark remarks, holding his nose to the smell. "Do you know of any other secluded areas around here?" she asks, but Mark changes quickly, with Eve using her powers to convert her clothes into her costume. "So how do we get out of here without being spotted?" Mark asks, though now he's in his Invincible costume. Adam Eve leads the way, and they both leap into the sky. "You'd be surprised how rarely people ever look up," she tells him, and they both arrive at the teen team's secret lair within the city bridge. Robot greets Invincible, assuming that he is the hero from last night. He tells them that he erased the villain known as Mahler's memory and allowed him to leave, assuming that he would lead them back to his base. Rex and Kate are on the mission, If you had gotten here 3 minutes later, I would have had to go myself. He tells them. The three teens take the hoverbike, quickly giving chase. Mahler stands on a street corner, dazed and confused. He finally goes into the secret lair, greeted by another man who looks exactly like him. Where have you been? We need those processors. I'm not going to have enough to power the robots without the new shipment, the second Mahler explains. The first one nods, telling him that he can't remember anything from last night, so he just came back. The two Mahlers then go into the next room, looking at their army of robots. I don't think the plan can wait, the second Mahler explains, when suddenly the roof explodes as the three teenage superheroes launch themselves in. I think we've heard enough, Robot exclaims, and one Mahler goes for Eve, but Invincible takes him out with a single punch. Robot manages to shock the other, dropping him quickly as Invincible helps Eve to her feet. Robot then turns to him. Thanks for the help, Invincible. You seem like a pretty useful guy. Think you might be interested in staying with us? He asks, and Mark smiles. I'll think about it. Is it always this easy? Meanwhile, at the mall across town, a teenage boy wakes up on one of the mall benches. He opens his shirt to reveal the strange robotic vest that he seems to be wearing. The timer on the vest reaches 0, and the explosion rips apart the mall, killing everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed Invincible Volume 1. If you did, make sure you like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments down below your favorite part about Invincible as a whole. And we'll see you next time right here.